What's up, Pitt fans? Welcome back to another Pitt mailbag here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. I'm Noah Hiles. He is Chris Carter. We are your Pitt beat reporters here for the PG. And Chris, how was your Christmas, buddy? Did you
It
have a
was
good
really nice.
Christmas?
It was a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa to everybody out there who celebrates those. Um, it was actually really nice getting to be able to sit down and be with family, especially after such a late night with the Steelers on Christmas Eve. But it was really good this year, and talked to a lot of friends too, who some of them hadn't gotten a chance to see their family since the start of the pandemic. So it felt like it was a really great holiday season for a lot of people out there. I hope it was for everyone who's listening to, anyone who's not listening to, but still everyone out there who needed to have a good holiday.
Yeah, I mean, I fall into that category. I was with people, last night who I hadn't celebrated with that specific group since 18, because we actually traveled during 2019. So got to see some cousins and aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in a long time. It's really cool. Great time of the year. And I'll say this too, like for me, Christmas really doesn't end until like the 27th, because you always have those like fallout things where like you might have a friend Christmas the day after, or or like a family thing or something like that. To me, like I just feel like, the holiday season kind of continues really all the way through New Year's. So keep celebrating, keep having a good time. And in the meantime, we've got another Pitt mailbag. Rather than answering some questions, we got some, but with it being a slower time, we've done this before. We're just going to kind of take the show in a different route today. And this is going to be our year in review show. Being that the next time that we record one of these, it will be 2023. We're going to review the year that Pitt Athletics had in 2022, a very eventful year filled with some success through multiple programs. And we're going to cover it all. We're going to start off with the highlights. Right now, Chris, best play from a Pitt athlete in 2022. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
It's got to be the pick six from MJ Devonshire against West Virginia in the season opener. I don't think that there was a more special moment that Pitt football had all season, even though there were probably better like skill moments. But MJ Devonshire doing that in front of the largest assembled Pittsburgh, not just Pitt, but Pittsburgh sports crowd in the city's history to beat West Virginia in the return of the backyard brawl. It was such a momentous thing. I just remember both of us sitting there in the Acrisure Stadium press box being like, oh my goodness, and just losing our minds watching such a great moment. MJ Devonshire doing it for Western Pennsylvania, doing it for Pitt. That's got to be my best play. What's yours?
So that's, to me, in our categories, I guess we'll run them down now. We have best play, best individual performance, craziest story, most memorable moment, and biggest accomplishment for Pitt Athletics. So the Devonshire play, while special, I think there were more exciting plays as far as athleticism made in the season.
Okay.
But that was definitely the best moment, which we can talk more about later in the show. I'm going to say the best play was the following weekend when Gavin Bartholomew hurdled a defender on the sideline. Just one of the coolest things I've really covered. It just, again, there was a ton of hype in that game. Pitt's offense looked the best it had really all season. And that first half against the Volunteers, who are playing in the Orange Bowl, a really good opponent, best team Pitt played all season. And that's one where, we don't have a rooting interest covering this team, Chris, but every now and then you see one of those plays where it's just so exciting. You can't help but get a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of pep in your step. And when Gavin hurdled that defender, that's a big man going very high. And it was really exciting. I think that was probably the play of the season for Pitt Athletics.
No, I don't argue with that. That was maybe the greatest athletic feat that we saw in one moment for Pitt. I mean, that was another moment where you and I were both like, oh, my God, when we saw it happen, because we just couldn't believe how easy he made it look. It was, number one, on Sports Center the next day. It was fantastic. So again, two amazing moments for Pitt football. Yes, it was a disappointing season. They didn't get back to the ACC championship, but it was still a lot of really amazing moments, and we'll go over a few more of them as we do this.
I'm going to throw in an honorable mention as well. If we could do plays, it would be the first two defensive plays Pitt had against Virginia, the back-to-back pick sixes with Devonshire and Marquez Williams, excuse me, allowed me to write my game story and have it finished by the end of the first quarter. Always appreciate those. Best individual performance, Chris. I think there's another very obvious one here. I'll let you start off with that one because I think I have a different one that doesn't necessarily give it a run for its money, but is also very noteworthy.
I think I know which one you're going to talk about in your second one too, because it's a different sport.
Yes.
But so yeah, we're on the same page. But I'll do the obvious one. It's Israel Abanikanda, Virginia Tech, October 8th. Wherever you were, if you're a diehard Pitt fan, that was the day that Izzy Abanikanda broke Tony Dorsett's single game rushing record by getting 320 yards on 36 carries. He also single-handedly tied the all-time single game rushing touchdown program record that stood since I think 1918. So that was just ridiculous. That was another game where we were just looking around each other like, what is this? Like how is this happening right now? That we're seeing such a historic rushing performance to tie this long-standing more than a century-old record, and then to break Tony Dorsett, one of the greatest Pitt players that ever lived, and to break a record that he set was a fantastic performance there. And it's not just Izzy, the offensive line also did an amazing job in that game and for most of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you just look back at that one. That's like you said. It's one where you remember where you were. I'll never forget covering that one. It was just so exciting because Pitt desperately needed a win. That's a week after they just lost to Georgia Tech as a 22-point favorite at home, and they were tied at the half. And Frank Signetti, called a shot. You reported it. He said, "We're taking over this game," and they did. They did on the ground. Izzy took over that game, and it's one of those ones where my biggest memory from it isn't a touchdown. It isn't a long run. It's Izzy being helped off the field with a couple of minutes left. I mean, it's one of those few times where you can say the guy left everything out there because his body was just so exhausted after running the ball 36 times, returning kickoffs, catching passes as well. I mean, he single-handedly put Pitt on his back that night and delivered an incredible effort. And to hear the fans chanting his name, and in a sport like football, you don't see that very often. And that was the moment where we kind of knew Abanikanda is having something really special here. It's a really special year, and it ended in an All-American season, and it's going to result in him hearing his name called in some round of the NFL draft this upcoming spring. So definitely a great performance. I think it's the best one Pitt's had, not only this year, but in plenty of years. But I think one that needs to be mentioned here is Rachel Fairbanks and the effort that she delivered against BYU in the second round of the NCAA tournament. First triple-double in the NCAA tournament in Pitt volleyball program history. And when you consider how many times now this program has played in this tournament, I believe it's, 5-6 in a row, something like that.
Yep.
They've been in there. And they're going deep. So they're playing a lot of matches. And for Rachel to just who had multiple triple doubles throughout the entire year. But I think just to do that on their home court, to beat a really quality opponent in round 2 on their really tough quadrant of that bracket, their region. Rachel Fairbanks, I think you could make the argument, was probably the best athlete statistically that Pitt had in any sport in 2022. And her efforts against BYU were up there as far as her best individual performances.
Absolutely. I covered that game, and I was just astonished by how many different things she did. And she was scoring points. She had this one time though, like she was always setting and getting assists for other players. And this one time she went up for the set and she didn't do the set. She just killed it with a no look behind the back toss. And I was like, ooh, and I was just like, what was that? And I asked her, she's like, yeah, we've been setting that up. And I was just like, and how humble she was about it. Like she was, and she was excited in the moment, but afterwards it was just like, that was something that we've been setting up for a while. And I was like, wow. But absolutely, she deserves that. That team deserves that. They had so many awesome moments over the year, and you're right. They swept BYU, and BYU came in like a good team. They handled their business, and on their way to the Final Four. Special team there from Pitt volleyball.
All right, we'll move on now. Craziest story. There were some good ones and bad ones that we've covered, but I'm actually going to start this one off. This is something that took place prior to both of us being on the Pitt beat. You probably covered it for another outlet. I definitely didn't cover it because I wasn't covering college sports at the time. But Jordan Addison, and his transfer. I mean that's one that when we look back at how college sports evolved in the early 2020s, Jordan Addison is going to be one of those things that's viewed as a checkpoint, a landmark, where this is the first time an amazing talent, a top-tier player at a 4-star school, 3-4-star school, gets swept away by the best programs.
And a Blitnikoff winner.
Right. This is an All-American, a Blitnikoff winner. He's going to be a first-round draft pick. And he was one of the, not just at his position, but he was one of the top returning players in all of college football. And Pitt, gained a lot of traction and attention based on the idea that he was going to be back. If you read the preseason magazines, the big ones that you get at the gas station or the grocery store, prior to that transfer, everyone had Pitt ranked high, and it was because, and they always led with Addison. They said Slovis is going to do well because of Addison. They said the run game will open up because of Addison. And his departure, I mean, the way it happened, the day it happened on the NFL draft, all of it, just craziness. So I think that's definitely the craziest story that happened in Pitt athletics this year. Chris, do you have any others that you would like to point out?
Well, it's actually one that, like you said, we weren't on with the Post-Gazette yet to cover. It actually happened same day. Kenny Pickett being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
It's so funny because, I do stuff on the Steelers, stuff on Pitt. And like when this moment was happening and our good friend John McGonigal, who used to cover Pitt football for this outlet, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he was there on site. And when he posted the picture of Kenny Pickett on the phone while the Steelers were on the clock, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is ridiculous. You mean the dude who just carried Pitt to its first ever ACC championship, that just finished third in the Heisman, a Pitt star is just going to be staying in Pittsburgh and going to be starting at quarterback soon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's crazy. That's insane. And just seeing the response, if you saw the videos of Pittsburghers just celebrating across the city that like, oh my gosh, we rooted for this kid. Now he gets to stay here. We can root for him some more. That to me was the craziest moment. And certainly the Jordan Addison fiasco that's historic for what Pitt went through. But I think it gave something for Pitt fans to celebrate and for the city to celebrate. Like even if you're not a diehard Pitt fan, or even if you went somewhere else, you can say like, you know what, we saw that kid, do the fake slide, and we saw that kid ball out. And now he's going to be playing for the Steelers. Okay, there's something there. So to me, that's the craziest story that happened this year.
See, I have that for our next category, memorable moment. But I will say, to throw in one more, the Dior Johnson story, which is still unfolding, also a very crazy story, which we both did cover and will continue to cover. No updates on that, by the way. Although I do see he's a little more active on social media. I don't know what to read into that, but who knows? I'm sure we'll find something out here in the new year on that. But I wanted to say that also needs to be mentioned as far as crazy stories goes. But memorable moment to build off on the Pickett thing. It's just like what you said. It's something where this is a guy that everyone in Pittsburgh was aware of, simply because I mean, his first start was
Yeah.
at Heinz Field, defeating the number 2 team in the country.
You mean Acrisure Stadium?
No, it was at Heinz Field at the time.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about this year with.
No,
My bad,
I'm talking against against the Hurricanes in a year that really meant nothing to Pitt football. They were the worst season Narduzzi's had with the Panthers. That's what that year gets remembered. It was the beginning of the Kenny Pickett era, and Pitt fans were there for the lows. You know, his struggles against Penn State, his struggles in the ACC championship game against Clemson, and they were, of course, there for the highs when he really figured it out in 2021. The crazy video game numbers he posted against who was it? New Hampshire. I think he threw like 7 touchdowns that game or something like that. The shootout against Virginia. With Jordan Addison having a 4 touchdown, 200-yard receiving game, the fake slide, all of it. And, you know, for a large part of the time between him opting out of that bowl game to the moment that Franco, talk about making it extra special of a moment, called his name in the NFL draft, there was a belief that he wasn't going to be around. There's no way he's going to get all the way down to 19. You know, you read the Panthers are interested. There's the Seahawks who might take him, the Titans, and all these teams. And there might be the Saints could trade up. There were so many things that needed to happen in order for him to be even available. And the fact that it kind of played out the way it did, I mean, it's something special for Pitt, who prior to Kenny, they hadn't had a first rounder taken in a while. And now probably the most recognizable player name the Panthers have had in decades goes to the same facility that he practiced at the last 5 seasons. It was a very memorable moment. So was the Pitt 6, Carter.
The pick 6 was an extremely memorable moment, as was everything Kenny Pickett getting to that moment. Also, just want to say Kenny Pickett, a true Pitt man, by the way, in true Pitt fashion, spent 2 years. Everyone thinks that he just figured it out his final year in college football. No. The 2 years before his final year at Pitt, he made sure to finish with 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions on the dot.
There we go.
Because he wanted to make a point as a Pitt man. Just had to get my West Virginia dig in there. I'm going to add to a memorable moment here, and it's one that I think that people shouldn't forget. I don't think when it happened, it was all over Pitt social media. Everyone was talking about it. But the 5-set comeback that Pitt volleyball had against the defending national champion Wisconsin. In the Elite 8 to get to the Final Four. Pitt went down 1-0, then went down 2-1 and against a team that was in their own stadium. Like, this was on the road. This was in a hostile environment. And they come back, they get the 4th set, and then in a 15-point dogfight, 15-30, they pull it out by 2 in just a special moment. From that group of women. They were spectacular. And it was an exemplary win of how they play volleyball. No one person was doing one thing. Everyone was digging. Everyone was scoring. Everyone was setting. Everyone was doing everything they could to best this other amazing team that was across the floor from them. So to me, that was an extremely memorable moment because there were so many people who never cared about volleyball before, but were like, go Pitt, and they were just watching this team dig it out. And I think everyone was just like, man, I don't know how to describe what just happened, but that was so amazing that I loved it.
Yeah. I'll throw one more honorable mention in there, and it was Pat Narduzzi calling out ESPN on ESPN after the backyard brawl.
And Scott Van Pelt being like, I had no idea
what was going on. Yes. Just that man woke up and was ready to go to war on September 1st. And his
Talk
team,
about my fans.
Yeah, that was I obviously didn't get to see that unfold live. We were waiting for him. He took forever to get to the podium, and it turns out the reason why is because he had waged war on national television against the worldwide leader of sports. But that was definitely something. That whole night, that whole day. I mean, when you're talking memorable moments, that's probably one of the most memorable backyard brawls ever. And You can even, from a West Virginia perspective, I know that's a tough loss for the Mountaineers in a season that not a lot of Mountaineer fans are going to want to remember. But just the fact that it returned after 10 years,
Yeah.
the game lived up to the hype. It wasn't a standalone. I know Penn State also played that night. I think Tennessee played Ball State that night, I believe, as well. But I mean, game day was there. It was the rebirth of one of college football's greatest rivalries, and regardless of who you cheer for on either side, you can't argue that game made that rivalry relevant for the next decade. Now
Absolutely.
it's completely back, and it's going to be fun to cover moving forward here. So we'll final category here: biggest accomplishment for Pitt athletics in 2022. I'll start off with this, Chris. It's two teams playing in two Final Fours in 2 weeks. And while the results didn't go in Pitt's favor in either one, with the men's soccer team losing 2-0 to Indiana, and then the following weekend, Pitt women's volleyball losing 3-2 to Louisville. Just to see, I mean, any athletic program will normally be happy with one of its teams reaching a national semifinal. But to have two do so in 2 weeks,
crazy.
That's huge. That's huge. And those weren't fluke runs. Those are teams that have both been to the Final Four before. And I think the storyline from both of those runs was, hey, we belong here now. We are a national power, like the Indianas in soccer, like the Wisconsins or the Louisvilles or the Texases in volleyball. We're on this same tier now. This wasn't just a one-time thing. The Final Four is the standard here for these programs, and for an athletic director like Heather Lyke, who we've been very complimentary of on this show. I mean, and it's hard not to be, just because look at the success the sports have had here at this university since she's been hired. It's a huge win for Pitt this year. Chris, do you have any other things that you'd like to point out?
So it's sort of tied into that, but from a different angle to talk about how this was accomplished, because it also ties in football. But Pitt being able to do those things and still have an 8-win season in football where they kept a lot of players in fighting off NIL, other programs coming in to try to scoop away your talent, and how the transfer portal has just reshifted the landscape of all college sports. You talk about, I wrote about Valeria Vasquez Gomez for Pitt, and how last year or 2 years ago, she was a starter on a great Pitt team. And then last year, she was a starter who got benched because she was injured and then lost her spot. And I did a whole feature on Dan Fisher, and he talked about how, Valeria, she could have left. She could have gone somewhere, been a superstar player who was guaranteed to always have a spot. But no, she came back to Pitt. She fought for her spot, got her spot back, and then was a superstar player for them in their Final Four run. Them doing that with so many other programs out there trying to scoop players from all different departments. The same thing goes for soccer with them getting back there, but also for football. Even though Jordan Addison did end up leaving, there was lots of rumors about a lot of players going. Brandon Hill was being sought after. Kalijah Cansey was being sought after. I think Eric Hallett had offers, and Jordan Addison left, but so many Pitt football players stayed, and it made it so that this year had so much going for it that if Keaton Slovis doesn't get hurt against Tennessee, maybe we are talking about this Pitt football team differently, because I think a healthy Keaton Slovis beats Tennessee in the second half of that game. And if he's healthy through that game, do they go through the stalls that lost them against Georgia Tech? And if you're talking now a 2-game difference, you're talking about a 10-win Pitt team at the end of the regular season. Maybe they don't get past North Carolina in the division, but still, you're talking about a completely different season if that doesn't happen. But all of that was built on the back of a roster that mostly came back from last year and said, hey, let's run this one more time. And this year, a lot of those guys are going to the NFL. There's still a lot of Pitt football players who are sticking around. So the biggest accomplishment is Pitt getting people to believe in Pitt. And I think that is something that shouldn't be understated for what I think Pat Narduzzi, Dan Fisher, all the coaches and under Heather Lyke's program have been able to do and establish in the past couple of years.
A couple of other accomplishments I feel like need to be noted. Pitt women's soccer reaching the NCAA tournament for the first time in program history.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a huge accomplishment there. And Kalijah Kancey being a unanimous All-American.
Absolutely.
I believe just the 14th time that's happened
15th.
in Pitt, 15th, excuse me, in Pitt's rich football history. Chris, before we wrap up the show, or next time we speak, it'll be 2023. I need a bold prediction from you for something that's going to happen in Pitt athletics in 2023.
Pitt basketball's going dancing.
Going dancing.
Going dancing. I'm just gonna say it. If you want a bold prediction, you not a methodical prediction where everything's. I'm saying Pitt basketball goes on a hot run this year in the ACC. The ACC isn't that good. There's a lot of really soft teams. I think that if John Hughley can get back healthy, this team can get 20 wins. And if you get 20 wins and a couple of ACC tournament wins, I think that could be the ticket for them to get back to the dance. Not a high seed or anything like that, but maybe one of the lower seeds there. There's my bold prediction. Pitt goes dancing this year.
That's a very bold prediction.
Yeah, you caught me. I was out of sports, man.
Yeah, they're going to need to beat teams like Virginia and Duke in order for that to happen. But hey, they have those teams on the schedule, so maybe. I'm going to go a little further down the line. I'm going to say my bold prediction, Pitt wins on the road at Notre Dame next fall in non-conference. That'll be a huge matchup. I'm assuming Notre Dame will probably be ranked to start the season. And, it's a homecoming game for Phil Dracovic.
Yep.
It'll be an interesting one. I'll say Pitt wins on the road at Notre Dame. I could very well change that prediction by the time that matchup arrives in the fall.
A lot of stuff has to happen.
Yes, but that's our bold prediction. Hey, hope everyone had a great holiday season, continues to have a great holiday season. Have a happy new year to everyone who tunes into these and reads along on the site. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and stick around. We'll have more Pitt mailbags coming for you in 2023. We'll see you next year.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.